So are you going to let libertarianism destroy the world? Check this out. Leave your comments, ding the bell, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel. I wanted to get into in some depth this conversation about Donald Trump possibly starting a war with China. In fact, we're going to kick off our second hour with that. But I want to start out today with peak libertarianism. I think that we are now, it could get worse, but so far, we are at peak libertarianism here in the United States. And this bizarre experiment that has been promoted by the billionaire class for over 40 years is literally killing us. Back in the years before Ronald Reagan, there was this real estate lobbying group. It was called the FEE, F-E-E. And they came up with the idea of creating a political party to justify deregulating the real estate and finance industries so that they could make more money. The party would give them ideological and political cover, and they developed an elaborate theology around all this. What came out of this political party that came out of this lobbying group, literally invented by a lobbying group, was called the Libertarian Party. And their principal argument was that if everyone acted separately and independently, in all cases with maximum selfishness, that would produce the very best outcome for society. This was advocated in various forms by Ayn Rand, by Milton Friedman, by Friedrich von Hayek, by von Mises, and others. And, try to provide a philosophical argument or framework to basically a justification for greed, selfishness, and the massive acquisition of wealth. In this libertarian world, there'd be no government needed beyond an army and a police force and a court system to defend the rights of property owners. In 1980, David Koch, the billionaire, actually ran for vice president on this newly formed Libertarian Party ticket. His platform was to privatize the post office, something that we will be talking about today. It looks like Trump is well on track to do that. Shut down all public schools, Betsy DeVos. Privatize Medicare and Medicaid, Seema Verma. End food stamps and all other forms of welfare, every Republican in Congress. Deregulate all corporate oversight, we'll get to that in just a second. And sell off the federal government's land and other assets to billionaires and big corporations. This was David Koch's political platform in 1980 when he ran for vice president. And since then, libertarian billionaires and right-wing media have been working really, really hard to get Americans to agree with Ronald Reagan's statement that he made in his first inaugural address, where he said, "In this present crisis, government is not the solution to our problem, government is the problem." Well, Trump is getting us there now. Every federal agency of any consequence is now run by a lobbyist or a former industry insider. The Labor Department, under Eugene Scalia, actively trying to destroy organized labor. The Interior Department, under an oil lobbyist, is selling off our public lands. The EPA, promoting deadly pesticides and allowing more and more pollution. The FCC is dancing to the tune of the giant telco companies and the internet service providers like Comcast. The Education Department is actively working to shut down and privatize our public school systems. The U.S. Department of Agriculture is shutting down food inspections. Even the IRS and the Social Security agencies have been gutted. Tens of thousands of their employees laid off just in the last couple of years. So now very, very wealthy people are no longer having their tax returns audited, and the wait time for Social Security disability claims are now officially well over 2 years. The guy Trump put in charge of the post office, he's actively trying to destroy the post office, slowing down mail. And the bonus for that, slowing down mail, is that the bonus for Trump on that is that it could throw a huge monkey wrench into any vote by mail efforts this November. Trump has pulled us out of the Paris Climate Accords. Fossil fuel lobbyists now control America's response to global warming. Our nation's response to the coronavirus has been turned over to private for-profit testing and drug companies. And the Trump administration refuses to implement any kind of official government policy, saying that it's all up to individual responsibility. The result is over 130,000 dead Americans and 3 million Americans who are currently infected and know it and are scared to death that they might die or they might kill other people and their families. While these libertarian ideas and policies promoted by that lobbying group back in the 1960s have made CEOs and billionaire investors very, very rich. It's literally killing the rest of us. FDR put America back together after the Republican Great Depression. He built the greatest and wealthiest middle class literally in the history of the world at that time. And now 40 years of libertarian Reaganomics have gutted our middle class, made a handful of oligarchs wealthier than anybody in the history of the world, and brought an entire generation of hustlers and grifters into public office via the GOP. When America was coasting on FDR's success in rebuilding our government and our institutions, nobody really took these crackpots seriously. Now that they've had 40 years to make their project work, we're hitting peak libertarianism. It's tearing our country apart. It's pitting Americans against each other and literally killing thousands of people every day. If this country is going to survive as a functioning democratic republic, we have to repudiate this whole greed is good theology, the ideology of libertarianism. We have to get billionaires and their money out of politics, and we have to rebuild our civil institutions. And that starts with waking Americans up to the incredible damage that 40 years of libertarian Reaganism has done to this country. I got to tell you, by the way, I'm reading a book right now by a fellow by the last name of Bergman. He's Dutch. And the book is called Humankind. And it lays out clearly and specifically how he sets out to address this question. I raised this question in my book Screwed back in 2005. I thought it was in Threshold too, but it turns out it's not. It must just be in Screwed. And in fact, I've got to go find a copy of Screwed and pull it out. But it was, back during the Enlightenment, basically there were two schools, two philosophical schools. You had on the one hand, the first guy who wrote about this, Hobbes, who said without a Leviathan, a giant beast, he referred to it as the iron fist of church or state. Without that Leviathan, without that controlling force, that human life would be terrible. That in prehistory, life was nasty, short, and brutish. And then, about 33 years after Hobbes died, along came Jean-Jacques Rousseau, the French philosopher and scientist, who said, no, it is civilization that has caused life to become nasty, brutish, and short. And back when we lived as hunter-gatherers, life was actually really, really good. And so the question, and many of the founders and framers of this country and much of the idealism on which this country was founded were big fans of Rousseau. Although a lot of the conservatives among them, including people like John Adams, are big fans of Hobbes. And so he sets out to answer this question. Who was right, Hobbes or Rousseau? I'm about a third of the way through the book. I recommend it really highly, Bergman's Humankind. But, I guess our question here for this first hour, beyond anything else, is are we going to continue to let this libertarianism, this Hobbesian idea, continue to destroy our country and kill us?